Of the Board of Education, and this meeting is now called to order. We are meeting virtually again this evening to be in compliance with the governor's most recent Safe Start executive order regarding public meetings. I want to take a quick roll call to make sure all board members can hear. Celeste?
Yes.
Thank you. Rusty?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Bo?
I'm okay now, Randy.
Okay, good. Joanne?
Yes.
Very good. Kurt?
Yes.
And Terry?
Yes.
Very good. Welcome back. I'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance on behalf of the board. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. And we'll proceed with our first order of business, which is to approve our agenda. And I believe Mark has one item he wants to remove, and that's the switchgear purchase. And I don't know of anything else that would change. Very good. Can there be a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make the following motion that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second?
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Excuse me, roll call vote. I'm sorry. Barb, please.
Mr. Droppers?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Rathburn?
Yes.
Dr. Shelton Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Van Antwerp?
Yes.
Mrs. Novaria?
Yes.
And Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Very good. The motion passes, and we'll proceed with our agenda as amended. I just want to make a comment that the agenda for our board meetings is normally finalized on Wednesday before our meetings on Monday, and it's posted to our website a few days later. For some reason, there was a lot of buzz in the school community that we would be approving a hybrid plan for our secondary schools tonight. Just to set the record straight, that item was never on the agenda, and it is not on the agenda tonight. Mark, let's move forward with the SOOPS report, please.
Thank you, Randy. We have a couple of reports and updates for you. The first two I'll let Ron Heron handle. That's a bond project update. And then we'll move right into the change order summary and the bond budget update. So those are the first two items on the report. Ron?
Okay, good evening, board members. I have a brief update for you related to the bond projects. And as Superintendent Beeline said, I'll move into the financial update and then the change order. I think Dan is with us. He might be doing the change orders for us tonight. So on the construction front, punch at Central Middle School, punch list work continues on second shift. Black box theater and choir in the band area, that work is ongoing and is still scheduled for November to be complete. The old Central Middle School lot looks like it's just has a few small items to wrap up the demolition this week. And we have been preparing, really the parent started preparing the parent drop off and bus loop. If you drive by there, you'll notice the excavating of that area, and it's starting to take shape there. Paving for that area is scheduled to start mid-November-ish. I mean, mid-October-ish, middle of the month, if the weather holds out for us. Also, at West Middle School, the new boilers were started up last week, and currently we're working on the controls to add that to our ongoing energy management system, and doing some system balancing. Architects and engineers compiled their final punch lists on Friday, last Friday. And that work will start and continue on second shift. In the Science Commons, which we said we would turn over, are scheduled to be turned over next week. Actually, it's the end of this week, now that I say that. So making good progress there. The only other update I have is at the Northern Auditorium. We're continuing really to do some of the things that I've updated you on in the past. Really continuing. We've got the second floor steel going in, continuing to do bathroom, locker rooms, rough ends, and walls and ceilings and plumbing and electrical. Masonry block, again, is ongoing. And you can see the north openings for the windows that have taken shape in that building, and also some underground plumbing is going in. So that's all I have on the update front. Questions or observations?
Ron, Joanne Wilson. I'm going to pick on your field of expertise, and I'm out of line. I've had a couple elementaries that I've dropped off some additional bottled water. Are our drinking fountains covered by health department orders?
Yes, they should be, and if you saw one that's not, it should be. But
Okay.
they were covered before kids came back, actually.
Thank you very much. So I know they're appreciating us dropping off some extra water. Thank you again, Ron.
Mm-hmm. I might add one thing. For those of you who are interested, now is probably a good time if you want to do a tour of West Middle School. Probably now is a good time to actually schedule that. I'll leave that up to Mark for you guys to maybe pick a date or sometime when you'd want to go through that building. Probably a good time because kids aren't back in the building 100% yet. And so I don't know when that's going to be. So now's probably a good time to get a good walkthrough. So I just invite you to do that.
Well, thanks for the invitation, Ron. We've been looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
Ron, just to be clear, that's for board members, right?
Yes, it is.
We will have an appropriate open house in that once conditions change for the community. You want to go into change orders then, Ron?
Sure. I'm going to start with the financial update, and then I'll let Dan do. We only have really, I think, 3 change orders. On your financial summary, there have been no changes to what we've budgeted for all projects. We still have in our contingency $1,751,548, which is what we've had going forward. And I'd like to add that we'll be this Friday starting to have a steering committee meeting to talk about future enhancements and how that might reflect on funding that we might have remaining. So, Dan, do you have change orders? If you're still there.
Yes, I do. I'm here.
Yep.
Okay, we'll get started with North Middle School. We have one change order there to add a reverse osmosis system to deal with the water quality and protect some of the equipment. And that is a cost of $6,750. Moving over to West Middle School, we installed and painted some extra stock tectum panels in the gymnasium. That was $11,228. And then we also added a new scoreboard, and that was $10,060. And that's it for change orders.
Any questions?
All good, Ron. Thanks.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ron and Dan. The next item up for an update on is our state funding. We've been closely watching the activity in Lansing, and Paula Johnson will give you a brief update on what we know about school funding for the 2021 school year.
Good evening, Board of Ed and Superintendent Beeling. Just a quick update tonight on where we are going to land as far as state funding for next year. As Mark has brought to the board at previous meetings, the special August revenue estimating conference did show more positive numbers than we were expecting. And so they developed the budget in a little bit different process this year than what they normally have, where each House and Senate will pass a bill and then it goes to committee. This year, leadership from the legislators and administration came together and made an agreement regarding the budget. And a conference committee report was established from that meeting. And then from there, that went on to House and Senate to be voted on. And that was voted on last week. So included in that bill is foundation allowance funding at the rate that we were planning on last year of $8,111 before we received the $175 proration per pupil, based on that supplemental budget that they passed last year. I do want to point out to the board that when we adopted our preliminary budget for the 2021 school year, we did plan on a $650 cut in the foundation allowance. So we built the budget on $7,461 instead of the $8,111 that we will be receiving. Also included in this bill is an increase in a categorical, they're going to call it 11D, and they're going to split $95 million one time. And it should equate to approximately $66 per pupil per district. It's going to depend on overall FTEs, obviously, that are submitted, how it's going to be broken out. This particular allocation is going to pay out based on 50% of last year's blended count and 50% of this year's blended count. I really don't have a lot else to add to that. I guess one thing that we do need to keep in mind for fiscal year 2022 is the structural imbalance that the numbers are showing, where we could be $1 billion short still based on COVID. So that is one item that we'll be watching closely to see how everything is coming about with revenue. Count day is coming up on October the 7th, and our MSDS file is due to CEPI on November 11th. And that's the short and sweet update that I had tonight for the board.
Hey, Paula, what's our estimate of our excess cash flow if we're going to have extra $600 per student this year?
I did a quick calculation guesstimating what fall was going to be, and I believe I came up with about 1.5 million.
Okay.
Just and not knowing what that fall number is going to be.
Right.
For sure.
I know it's still a guess.
Yeah, just a guess, a high end guess.
Okay.
That fall count that we're going to be preparing everything for is only going to count for 22.5% of our blended funding. So
Right.
the majority of our number has already been established for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, yeah, this is Bo. Not really a question for Paula, but just Randy, Mark, and my colleagues. I guess I would, now that the real budget numbers or the state funding is becoming known, I would advocate for an autumn first budget amendment this year when we start, dealing with some real numbers. So, thank you.
Oh, I agree. I'm looking for our unfunded percentage of our budget. Paula, how many students did we have last year? 8,000? Go ahead.
I do not have that exact number in front of me because I do not have that state aid status report at home with me, Joanne, but it was 8,860 something, I believe.
That's great. That's close enough. You know me, I'm kitchen math. Thank you, Paula.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Paula? Very good, Paula. Thanks for all the good news.
Randy, the only thing I'll mention at this point before we get into the board education piece is we do have 3 surveys out there right now that are taking place. We have a student survey, a parent survey, parent/caregiver survey, and an employee survey. And it's really a high-level survey just to get some feedback from our student, staff, and community around the plan. It's roughly the learning plans that we put in place and their experiences this fall. So those went live on Friday, and we will close this Friday at the end of the day. So we hope to have a quick turnaround, getting some results, and look forward to analyzing that and getting some feedback from our different stakeholders to help us make some decisions along the way. So that's the only added piece I'll provide for the update.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, we'll move to board education, our extended continuity of learning plan.
Sure, thank you. Well, those, as we reflect back on the past half a year or so, if last spring the district was required to put in place a continuity of learning plan, and that plan primarily addressed certain things that were required by the state to be included as to what we were going to do to finish out the 1920 school year. That plan was submitted by us to KRESA for approval and then implemented during the course of the remaining months of last school year. And again, very specific to the end of the year. Then this summer, the district was required to create a COVID preparedness and response plan. That was a plan that the board approved back in August, and it primarily dealt with our learning models that we would have in place during the various phases that the state found itself in. So that, again, was board approved back in August. And now we're asked as a district to develop what's called an extended COVID-19 learning plan, which, as I understand it from various sources, is more of the transparency piece that is required by the legislature. And this plan too needs to be submitted to KRESA by October 1st for their approval. We'll go into a little more detail about that plan, and that's the purpose of tonight's board education piece. But to build on what Randy had mentioned earlier, the plan that we're presenting does not require board approval. But if there are elements of that plan that do not align with what was board approved in the COVID preparedness and response plan, then the board would need to take action on that. And so Randy's clarification was, we're not asking the board for approval tonight. However, in October, we will be, if based on the work that we're doing over the next couple of weeks, there will be, if there's a change from the preparedness plan models that we presented, there will be board action expected in order for us to implement our extended plan. So this evening we have Mike Huber, Michael Pasco, and Kelly Jensenius to present and inform you and give you a chance to ask questions about the planning that has been taking place and the plan that we'll be submitting to KRESA for approval. So Dr. Pasco, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Superintendent Beelang and trustees. Mike's going to put up a slide deck as we'll walk through in a bit, but we'd like to give you an overview of the extended COVID-19 learning plan for Portage Public Schools. Like Mark had stated, Governor Whitmer signed that House Bill 5913 into law. I believe that was August 20th. It stated that in order for us to receive our state aid for the 2021 school year, we must provide for instruction under this extended COVID-19 learning plan. So that needs to be approved by the ISD. Now, this plan does not replace, like Mark said, our district RTL preparedness plan, but it is an additional plan that will include some new assurances. You'll see some sections on educational goals, how we deliver instruction, grading, and equitable access. And we'll go over that in just a little bit. We did set some goals prior to September 15th deadline, and now we're required to submit them within our extended learning plan, like Superintendent Beelang said, to KRESA no later than October 1st. I'll start by saying, though, the COVID-19 global pandemic, it's impacted our school community in a number of ways. For many, it's a traumatic event in which some students have significant gaps in their learning, and we're seeing equity issues are more pronounced than ever before. So it's challenging times in terms of doing what we're doing. We anticipated students would come to us this fall with a wider than usual range of competencies. That's resulted in the need for opportunities to catch them up and try our best to close these learning gaps. And that's been a challenge, particularly for those that are in a virtual setting. We also recognize that our teachers would need to be supported and provided opportunities to collaborate with one another as they plan for these new modes of instruction. And then as a system, we've tried to ensure that we've got some structures in place to promote student engagement and achievement for all. We focused offering rigorous teaching and learning. We push for emphasis on equity for all learners. And we also set out on a mission to have well-being of our students and our staff. That was part of our initial vision and mission as we moved into the summer work, as well as moving into the fall, and that remains to be at the forefront. We also recognize that we have a broad spectrum of perspectives out there in terms of what our instructional plan should offer. So we have families that have advocated from day one that all of our students be back in person, in classrooms with their teachers. At the same time, we have families who want to stay virtual for the remainder of the school year until a COVID-19 vaccine is proven effective. So that's the range, just so folks understand, that we are working with. Our RTL plan focused on giving families something that could work for them, given the wide range of beliefs and needs, all while providing flexibility. So it has been a challenge, and we did try to, from the onset, try to give folks something that they could resonate with and something that would work for them. But again, it's been very difficult. We want to work towards bringing students back into our classrooms with their teachers at the appropriate times, because we know that's when we're at our best. More importantly, we know that's what's best for our students instructionally and social emotionally. So we've taken it slow, particularly at the secondary level, but our teachers across the board are doing incredible work, and they need to be commended for that. We've all been forced out of our comfort zones and challenged with serving our families in ways that we've never had to before. So I want to thank every teacher, all the staff members and the leaders for rising to this occasion. I just want them to know that their work is valued. It's much appreciated, as well as the feedback that we've been receiving. We're reading and paying attention to all of that and trying to make sense of it. So I just want to say thank you. Also to our families out there that are tuning in, thanks for your patience, your flexibility, and support. This is hard on us all, and this school year will present challenges. It'll continue to present challenges as we transition and respond to your needs and to our external environment. We are approaching September 30th, which was a date that many families thought to be a transitional point for our programming. That date was set because it aligned with Governor Whitmer's executive order at the time, and that was related specifically to funding and pupil accounting. So that no longer is an issue. There's extensions on all of those restrictions and guidelines. So I just want to be clear and transparent with our folks out there that there's no changes that are being proposed for the week of October 5th. So just some clarification around that September 30th I felt was needed. We do believe, though, like Mark said, the results of the Pulse survey that was sent out last Friday, we believe that's going to give us some informative data to make some decisions to move us forward, alongside all the feedback that we receive on a daily basis. So we're going into week 5, I believe, of the school year. Our families have some experiences to draw on and reflect on. So we encourage all those who received the survey to complete it by October 5th. I believe that's when the survey closes. And that goes out to our staff and our students as well. So having said that, we have Mr. Huber with us. We have Mrs. Jensenius. We want to go over the extended learning plan and what that looks like K through 12. as well as hopefully at the end of this, have some conversation on potential next steps for our secondary programming. But also we want to hear from you as a board what you may need to carry your work forward. So we're going to start with Mrs. Jensinius, as she can help provide us with an overview of where we've been with our elementary schools and kind of where we're going. And Mr. Huber will walk us through the deck as well, focusing on the extended learning plan components and talking a little bit about where we're at with the secondary level. So Kelly, I think at this time, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pasco. Good evening, trustees. It's good to be with you tonight. I'd like to take this opportunity to update you on how our PPS elementary schools are operating. When we began the 2020 school year, we started at elementary with about 2,044 elementary students attending our face-to-face programming in our 8 elementary school buildings. We had about another 1,753 of them attending virtual through our PPS virtual programming, and then about 44 enrolled in our KVIC program. Now, over the past 4 weeks, we have processed over 400 change requests from families for a variety of reasons. A majority of those requests were wanting to transition to our face-to-face program. Sorry, I got distracted there. Last week, our elementary survey captured an additional 350 students who are projected to transition back to our elementary school buildings district-wide at the beginning of the second marking period. Like Michael said, our teachers have been working extremely hard, and to provide students in both our virtual and face-to-face modes of learning with meaningful instruction during these difficult times, and continue to make a huge difference for our students. So we want to give them a round of applause for that hard work. We know what they've gone through and have done so far is just phenomenal work. We see it in our buildings every day. I just want to say great job. At this time, what I'd like to do, though, is to take a moment to share the results of our modes of learning collected from our recent elementary survey. So I just want to do that for a minute. All right. So we have this one here. As you can see, 79.2% of the 1,464 respondents felt that the virtual learning experience has been an enjoyable one for their child. We totally acknowledge that we had a huge learning curve at the beginning. We had some technical, some system details to overcome, and we continue to work on improving and supporting our teachers and our families. But we couldn't be prouder to see that happening with our virtual programming. When we look at the next slide, we start to see with our communication, 88.8% of our respondents stated that the level of communication was just right for their families. Felt like that was the right amount, just the right amount happening. And again, our teachers, they've been phenomenal in providing the supports that families need. They are feeling super connected to their teachers, and they're feeling that they are giving them what they need. Moving to our face-to-face, we wanted to share that data as well. And here are students who are engaging in that face-to-face mode of learning. We're seeing that out of the 1,637 responses, that 99% of those are enjoying their experience. Our students and our families, they're happy to be back in the building, and they're working together to stay safe and be there with one another. If you walk through those buildings, you see that smile on those kids' faces and the teachers working alongside them. And finally, 88%, when we look at the next one, of our respondents felt that the health and safety protocols are just right. We'll continue to monitor. We're going to adjust as needed those procedures to make sure that we continue to keep kids safe in our buildings. The building principals have been doing a great job with that, making sure that it matches what they see needing to happen. So we're proud, like I said earlier, of the work our teachers have been doing. We want to continue to focus on improving our processes and procedures in both modes of learning. So our next steps at elementary, as we move to that next slide, will be to continue to focus on good instructional practices, both modes of learning by engaging in the following areas. We're going to make those needed adjustments based on feedback received from that most recent pulse survey. Again, we want you to get out there and we want you to make sure that you're sharing your thoughts. We're going to use our most recent Acadians benchmark data to support students through our MTSS process by implementing intervention supports, both face-to-face and virtually. We tested our children. We did the benchmarking virtually. Like, that was an amazing process that our reading specialists and teachers worked together to pull off in a virtual environment. I was really shocked and proud of that as well. We're going to continue to provide additional professional development for all teachers through including our Pear Deck. It's a new interactive tool that's going to help improve student learning through increased student engagement strategies. Elementary teachers are going to be doing that this Friday. And then we are going to work to fulfill transition requests by November 2nd. Building principals will also continue. Once we get through this piece, it takes a bit to transfer 350 kids around, but we're going to continue to work with our families as those extenuating circumstances arise, and then we'll make those changes as needed between those transition time frames. So we're going to keep doing that work to make sure we have a seamless flow between our programs as needed. And we just want to thank you for partnering with us to make this a successful experience for all our PPS elementary students. So I appreciate your time. And I think it's on to Mike Huber now.
Hi, good evening, trustees. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Kelly, for that look at that. I want to kind of detail a little bit of our secondary return to learn and some of the things we're seeing with curriculum and instruction, kind of looking at some of the complexity that we have in our programming, especially some of the things we've been getting feedback from this week around families and parents that are on both ends of our spectrum. We get a lot of feedback from families who desire in-person instruction and are looking forward to us moving to in-person instruction. And we also are seeing some families who want us to be virtual and remain virtual. So we're seeing a lot of components that are at those extremes. But that kind of piece for us, we have the same software updates that we've done that Kelly mentioned with Pear Deck and some other pieces. And we're looking at adding some new webcams for our instructors to be able to provide better web services. We do want to take a look at our extended COVID-19 learning plan and just kind of get into the details for you and talk about some of the components in there, as well as talk about how that connects with our preparedness plan. So this is required by Public Act 149, and this really is the accountability and transparency piece for our preparedness plan. So we're going to walk through a few of our academic goals and the pieces and parts of equity for all our students, and then a little bit about fulfilling that mission to educate all of them through this, and a little on our reconfirmation elements. So every month we need to come back to you, share our plan, and get some public comments like we're going to be receiving this evening, and continue with what we're doing on our return to learn. So for assurances, the Superintendent Beelang had to sign or will sign a document later this week with our extended learning plan in it, and we're going to cover dates and timeline for elements. We know that in January, we're going to have to bring back to you our progress on the goals. We know that we needed goals and assessments determined in mid-September, which we've done. We know we need to confirm that we're doing and delivering our instruction as designed. And then every month bringing you that reconfirmation and identifying our equitable services that we're providing our students. So for our goals this year, normally we have some long-term goals related to school improvement. We also bring you components of our goals when we talk about either Monterey Report 1.1 or we get into those. With the extended COVID learning plan, we identified 3 particular goals. The first one being our K-5 reading program. So we've used Acadians for quite some time now. It used to be called Dibbles. And our goal with Acadians for this year is to have 60% of our students at grade level by the end of the year in K-5 reading. Our teams are working on that. We're really hoping we exceed it, but if we need to modify that number because we've reached it, we'll do so kind of at mid-year when we assess there. So right now we're in the process of wrapping up our Acadience scoring at elementary, and we'll have some data to bring back for you next month. For K-8 in mathematics, we're going to use our NWEA screener to identify our goals here. What we are looking for is an improvement of score from fall to spring. So this would be an improvement in their RIT score, is what the acronym that NWEA uses. And so that growth that we're looking at, we want to see that metric move upward for our students, all our students in K-8. For our English learning in 6-8, we're going to do NWEA as well. And we're looking for the same goal to be set, improvement of our score from the fall to the spring. And so what we're really trying to ensure is that our students are improving. And we've kind of put all of those goals and assessment pieces into NWEA and into our extended COVID learning plan. If you take a look at our elementary instructional model, as Kelly just talked about it, it's going to remain the same for the duration of the first semester so far. We do have things that come up that allow us to adjust our model that we need to do in our extended COVID learning plan. We'll go ahead and do that. We know we have in-person teaching and virtual teaching that's happening, that families have the opportunity to shift at marking period to a different model. Our secondary instructional model is going to remain the same for the duration of the first marking period. Our virtual teaching model that we're using with in-building support is worthwhile. You see a little photo there on the right-hand side of some middle school students. Our special education teachers right now at our secondary level are currently doing some in-person and virtual instruction simultaneously. They'll have students in their room participating in classes that are happening elsewhere in the building virtually. And our intent right now is to adjust our preparedness plan and look for a hybrid model that has been recommended by our RTL team. We're going back to explore those things in summer, and we've put some information out there and receiving some feedback on that particular part of our learning plan. So that's what we're looking at in terms of our instructional model with both elementary and secondary. We still are continuing our supports for all students, and equity is one of the pieces that's inside of the extended COVID learning plan that we're required to do. We have a section in there around extra supports for students who have IEPs or receive special services from us, and we know that we want to ensure those are still happening. All of their 504 and IEPs are being reviewed throughout the fall to make sure we're meeting their learning goals. We know that technology's in there. Mr. Vomastic has ensured that our Chromebooks are being provided for all our virtual learners, and his entire tech team has been supporting both repairs, delivery, and help desk things. We know that our English learners are going to need support, and that's through Teresa Fortin, our English learner teacher, and the paraprofessional staff that she has. They're using a variety of methods, including some push in and pull out through virtual time with those students. And then, of course, we're ensuring our extended opportunities. We have dual enrollment, EFE, EFA, and CAMZ, along with ATIP programs that are all happening right now. And we want to make sure our students still have access to all of those. Our reconfirmation process that we have in here is that we're going to provide monthly data updates starting in October. We'll have some attendance and engagement, and we need to share progress towards our goals. And then any changes in this plan, we're going to need to bring those to you as a board, especially given the way that we set up our preparedness plan to have an explicit secondary and in elementary models to them. And those will all have a public comment period here at a board meeting attached with them. So that's kind of a look at what goes into our extended COVID learning plan. And Dr. Pasco is going to share a little bit more on our next steps as we wrap up our presentation this evening.
All right, thanks, Mike. Yeah, as to next steps, we want to continue that process for feedback from our team leaders. We've gotten some information, particularly at the secondary level, as to some of the thoughts around what we're looking at for a transition marking period 2. Our principals are helping lead that work, and as well as our instructional leadership or our site-based teams in our buildings. On October 8th, we're going to review the results from the pulse surveys. That closes on October 5th. We want to continue with professional learning. We have some coming up on October 9th for our staff. Make sure we're preparing them for any type of transition that we may incur. And then just ongoing return to learn and executive team meetings. We meet on a weekly basis to help move the work forward. So that's kind of the next steps as to where we need to go with our work. It'll be interesting to see what the pulse survey brings us, and we're really eager to kind of disaggregate that data. Couple questions for the board as we close up. What information would you guys need in order for us to make any necessary adjustments to our preparedness plan? And then also, how can we support you in the monthly reconfirmation process that we need to go through collectively every 30 days? So just a couple of things I want to put back to you guys so we can jot some notes down. Again, what information do you need from us in order to make any necessary adjustments to the preparedness plan? And also, how can we support you in the monthly reconfirmation process?
Dr. Pasco, I think you've got a little silence here. We would like you to prepare us a memo and give us a chance to feed that back to our president in an outline. How do you feel about that, Randy?
Sure. I mean, I'm sure administration was planning to give us a copy of the presentation, and we can provide feedback that way. Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Joanne.
Does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Randy, I'll respond to Mike's question. And I want to think about this further, but my immediate reaction is I'd like to know 3 things, and maybe more after I sleep on it. I'd like to know what the parents think. And, you know, as I think we're about to find out in a few minutes, I mean, we got a flurry of emails today of people who think that at the beginning of the second marking period, we're going to return to some kind of a hybrid face-to-face model throughout the district. And the people who emailed us today were universally critical of that. And they were mostly teachers, a few parents, but mostly teachers. So, you know, I'm glad that we're surveying our constituency groups. You know, I think it's so hard, kind of how to strike this right. And it's like, you know, with the parents, it's like, you know, pick your poison. And which option do you want? And, you know, 50% will fall on one side and 50% will fall on the other. And maybe that's 60-40 or 40-60. And based on Kelly's data, it kind of sounds like it started somewhere and it's drifting more toward, I want my kid in the building, at least for the elementary side. And getting that kind of data from parents, for me, is very important. And then the second piece of data that would be really important is, what do the teachers think about this? I mean, you saw today, if you saw any of those emails, just the hint that this was being discussed immediately became, this is going to the board tonight for a vote. And it's like touching a match to dry tinder. And I really want to know kind of where the teachers fall out on this, because the teachers who reach out to us, they have a valuable point of view, but the ones who reach out don't always represent the point of view of all of them. And so I really encourage this work, whether it's, well, probably through survey and maybe just a lot of conversations, is to figure out what that spectrum looks like. And at one end of the spectrum, you've got the teachers who say, I do not want to go back. It is not safe. And at the other end, you've got teachers who say, yeah, I'll go back. I'm fine with that. And then in the middle, you've got teachers who are like, well, I wouldn't be thrilled about it, but if that's, you know, if that's what's best for kids, I'll do it. And I'd like to get a handle on kind of, you know, how big those 3 groups were, because I got floored this summer when we heard again and again, really from teachers, that they did not want to go back in the building. And then when we started elementary school, and we found out that most of the teachers actually fell in the other 2 groups, either most of the elementary teachers, they were either, yeah, I'm okay with going back, or I'm not thrilled, but I'll do it. So it's trying to help us as board members kind of sort through and try to figure out what the real lay of the land is there with the teaching staff. I mean, I think that's important. If 90% of the middle school and high school teachers are saying, no way, we cannot go back, I mean, that's a real issue that we'll have to deal with. But we don't know that unless you help kind of dig down, probably through surveys, and help us figure that out. So those were two things I'd like to have a better handle on. Then the third thing is, once again, let's not leave the public health experts out. What are they saying? And where are those trends going? And, what's coming out of the governor's office, what's coming out of the county health department, and just making sure we're up to speed there. So anyway, those are my thoughts. That's kind of what I'd like to have. But I do want to sleep on this a little bit more. So my answer might grow a little bit by tomorrow morning. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bo. That's helpful.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
I have a couple of things too, Terry here. I guess the communications that we've received are really, a lot of them are very much in panic mode. And the questions that they've asked is, what's driving the change at the secondary level? Is it a change in the numbers in terms of the science and positive cases? Or is it because parents want their kids in school? Or really, what is it? What are the drivers behind it? I also am getting the feeling that teachers and parents think that a detailed plan of a hybrid model is already a done deal, that it's already been put together, and they haven't had input, despite the fact that the surveys have been sent out. It seems like there's a feeling that that was just for show, and they won't have input. So though I've tried to communicate that that's not the case, I think that they need some assurances from you, both parents and teachers, that that is not the case. And in fact, you'll be working with their information to put together something that's safe as well as educationally sound for everybody and something that's doable. So those are my questions.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Bo and Terry. I also think about our high school teachers that are teaching 6 out of 7, and they're not teaching 6 English classes, and the impact of class sizes. I'm not surprised that 358 elementary students want to change, their parents want to change one way or the other, because that represents less than 10% of our population. But I'm looking at our teachers that are teaching up to 40 students across 2 different schools, and how those students will be separated and accommodated. So I'm also worried about we have no 6-foot distancing. And so, yes, we have, what will impact upon our classroom sizes. Thanks, Bo and Terry.
Michael, Kurt Droppers. Hey, I'd like to know our cohort schools throughout the state, what they're doing, since we're measuring ourselves against them. I have a daughter-in-law that teaches in the Zeeland Public, and they're all back at all levels. And we've chosen those groups to compare ourselves to. I'd like to know how they're doing and what, what's going on, good and bad, if some of them are back full-time with all their students at all grade levels.
Yeah, we did look into some of that. Kurt, it looked like the majority of our comparators were back, or at least planning to go back face-to-face. But I agree with you. I think we need to, just because folks are going back, it doesn't mean it's coming without barriers. So I think we need to stay in touch and connect with them and network a little bit to see what's working well and some of the struggles, and maybe we can learn from some of those. I know Mike reached out to a few that are just coming off of a hybrid model. They weren't in our comparative schools, but I think we learned from a couple of those conversations already, and we'll continue to do that, Kurt. So great point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, it's Rusty here. I guess more than anything, I think we need a lot of communication. I mean, more than just board meetings. Potentially, if we were to make this decision before mid-November, you know, we just have a couple board meetings to discuss it. So that's really important to me is lots of communications to our parents, our staff, and the board. You know, we got to stop the rumor mill. We got to help anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety, obviously, right now from a lot of points. I guess I'd want us to assure safety. And I'd like to ask a couple questions in a moment, but I just want to give my perspective. I believe, I talked to some board members about this. I believe some kids need to be in the building. Some kids want to be in the building. Some teachers need virtual for safety reasons. Some teachers want virtual. So I want to make sure we're taking care of needs for individual students and wants. And there's actually some kids that need to learn virtually. Some kids do. I think most kids would like to go back, but we want to do it in a very safe manner. You know, and I want to make sure we have these environments that are clean. So is Ron Heron available?
Yes, he is.
Ron, I just wanted, because I got concerns with cleanliness of the buildings, okay? First of all, I saw a post that somebody showed me from one of the elementary Facebook groups, and a board member had posted about Portage doing the minimal requirements that the state requires. Is that true? Can you address that? Are we doing just the minimal or above and beyond? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, we're doing, quite frankly, I think, you know, they have the highly recommended, and not recommended. And by and large, we're doing both of the highly recommended and recommended as it relates to cleaning. And you know, I don't know where that comes from, but anyway, they're requiring us to get into the classrooms every 4 hours at the elementary, and that's what we've been doing, making sure that we get in and get those classrooms cleaned when the kids are not in the classroom, wiping down touch points. So I would argue that that's not a fair statement, and I don't know where that would come from. So,
okay. Specifically, I also heard a story that an M&M was left out outside of a teacher's room in a high school, and it took a significant amount of time to be cleaned, maybe days. Can you address that, or what the situation is there?
Yeah, here's what I can tell you relative to making the most use of our resources. And I did hear that somebody planted an M&M, which I'm really not privy to, but and that it did not get cleaned up. You know, generally we like communications when things aren't happening right away. I don't think there's ever been a time that we haven't addressed issues that do come up. It can be likely that things could get left behind. I will say this about our focus relative to cleaning. Our focus is less on picking up things off the floor and more focused on cleaning surfaces and making sure that we keep people safe from the virus. And that's our focus relative to the resources that we have. And so I know that everybody wants, here's the thing, unless we all pitch in on this, Rusty, probably not going to happen. But what I would say is that our primary focus is to make sure those rooms are sanitized and disinfected and cleaned. if they miss some trash periodically, I'm not going to say that does not happen, but I know where their focus is, and I think they're doing a pretty good job of it. And I think the elementaries would bear that out.
Do we spend significant time in the middle school classrooms where it's only teachers?
No, we don't. Listen, we don't. Well, there was a miscommunication about cleaning teachers' desks, first of all. Now, I want to address that one here and now. We don't really clean a teacher's desk unless it's requested. We don't have our custodians messing with teachers' desks unless they give us permission to do so. And also, we make sure that, when teachers are in the room, we don't go there while they're teaching, but we do go in and try to wipe down some of the areas in their classrooms. However, those classrooms are not getting cleaned, what I would say getting wiped down every night, because they're the only ones that are supposed to be in their classrooms.
Okay, because there's just thanks, Ron. Because one of the things is safety. We want staff to be safe.
Yep.
I want people to feel safe, and if I just need to understand, what that means and all that. And I really appreciate you giving me some clarity on that.
Yep.
Just like I said, just to back to everything. Everybody, I just think more communications. We aren't going to have enough meetings. If we do make a decision, we have to really vet this. If there's strong board support, or maybe the board makes the decision to stay where they are. I can tell you specifically, my kids are thriving in virtual, and I really appreciate the hard work of the teachers. I can hear them throughout the morning before I head to work, and a lot of good things going on. So, thank you.
Thanks, Rusty.
Hey, Rusty, I want to add an additional point, but your comment, I heard the board communication part come through real clearly. But the other piece, and I think you were saying this too, is more kind of stakeholder communication. I just want to underscore that. But this is a big deal, and people directly involved need to have a chance to kind of talk through it.
Yeah, thanks, Bo. Lots of stakeholder communications, staff, students, parents, everybody. We really need them to let them know what we're thinking.
Well, and we need to know what we're thinking too. It's very difficult to answer panicked people's questions when we don't have detailed information.
Any other questions from board members?
Randy, it's Rusty again. Sorry, just a comment, because I just got so many notes on my desk. Back to Kelly's statistics, I think that's pretty, I'm floored that 79% of the parents are happy with virtual. It sounds like the elementary teachers, especially virtually, are doing a great job, because I thought that was going to be one of the biggest challenges, elementary virtual. It's not perfect, I'm sure, but 79% of people being satisfied is great. 88% feeling the health and safety of their child is great. That's wonderful. So good statistics.
Yeah, we were super excited to see that.
Hey, Rusty, can I build on that comment too? But it just makes such a great point. The people who comment, who reach out to the Board of Ed to let us know their opinions, it's not the 80.
Yeah.
And that goes to my comment. I really need to have some objective, kind of temperature taking, because we hear from the ones who aren't satisfied, and we need to listen to them. They have good points, but in many cases, it's not representative of the whole. And so, yeah, that's maybe my biggest thing here is trying to figure out kind of what the whole perspective is across the continuum from both parents and from staff.
Ditto, Bo.
Right. But we also know that of the people that didn't send their kids to elementary initially to school, 25% of them are making a change because they want their kids in school. So, I mean, that's a telltale fact all by itself.
Yeah.
Can I ask Kelly a question about that too? The 400 who want to come back. Are adjustments being made to in-person classroom situations as groups of kids come back? For instance, if you had 15 in a class, now you have 20, you only have one teacher in a grade. Will there be some switch-arounds made in terms of who's doing in-person and who's doing online and that kind of thing procedurally?
Yeah, so Terry, so the 400 change requests that originally happened over the couple weeks, those that were, and some of those were those initial parents making quick changes, like in the moment that happened, or unenrolled or re-enrolled. And so it was just a lot happening. We wanted you guys to see that there was a lot of change happening in these couple weeks and we should give a shout out to our building secretaries for doing all that hard work over these past couple weeks. But from there, those 350 that we just took that survey on to say, hey, what's going on? What do you want to do when we hit that second marking period? We're sitting down again tomorrow. There's a group of us sitting down tomorrow and looking at that impact. Where does it hit? Which rooms does it go into? And initially, we weren't sure what we were going to get, if we were going to get way more than that. And that was going to have major impact in switching teachers from here to there. As it looks, it doesn't look like we're going to need to do that at this point, because the numbers in those classrooms, like you were saying, like there may be 13 in a first grade classroom and maybe there's 4 going into that room, or because of the 8 buildings and the way those numbers spread out, that's what we're going to look at tomorrow. But at that first glance, it doesn't seem to have a major impact in shooting numbers through the roof. I think there was maybe one place that there is, but that's where we're going to talk with that principal to say, now what do we need to do here? Are we going to hire somebody in there? Are we going to move somebody around? But we're going to have those conversations coming up, absolutely, for that. But these numbers seem very reasonable to work with and to keep everybody at a good place. So.
Okay, great. Thanks for answering my question.
Thanks, Terry.
I have just a couple of questions. Number one, the goals that we're setting for this year, do those goals reflect the learning gaps that we're seeing?
At this point, Mr. Van Antwerp, we know that there are probably learning gaps consistently, but there because we know that the home learning spring hit other students. It didn't work. Acadience and NWA assessments this fall will help us identify whether or not we.
Was anybody else struggling with Mike's audio?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, Mike, could you repeat that?
Sure. I apologize. Hopefully my audio is working better. Can you guys hear me okay now?
There you go.
Okay. So while we know there were learning gaps that were developed, we know that they are not consistent with students, because in the spring, some of the learning worked for them, and for other students, it didn't work well. So we're hoping that our Acadience and our NWA assessments this fall will help identify those learning gaps, and so that we can start to close them, and especially when it comes to reading and math. So we're hoping the fall assessments do that for us.
Okay, so that 60% goal for Acadience, that's the goal we would have anyway, even if we didn't have the situation we're in?
We usually target an 80% number, and we usually look at other growth or leave NWA out of that number altogether. But what we wanted to do was set some goals that we were seeing some comparator communities use, and then adapt from there at our midwinter assessment.
Okay. And then my other question is, I know you're going to be collecting data on attendance and engagement, you know, especially with our virtual students. Do you have any feel for that now, or is it too early?
On attendance, attendance and engagement being two different things, certainly, especially with high school students, we get our attendance numbers and we, you know, can look at those. But engagement's a little bit more difficult, especially as we look at middle school and high school to try and see, is it turning in an assignment or is it participating daily in the interactive chat that a class might be having. So we know we need to track attendance, but we're not sure how we're actually going to look explicitly on encouraging the engagement component from our secondary students.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you. Any other questions from board members?
Randy, just a quick observation. I'm so glad you brought up that Acadience number. I jotted a quick note, and Mike, thanks for your answer there. And it's just a reminder that this year, this is almost an impossible equation to balance. And people are balancing, you know, student achievement with safety. And anyway, I mean, I appreciate you guys have done a ton of work, and I'm going to thank staff and teachers here during public comment, but this is just a difficult equation to balance.
Any other comments from trustees?
I'm sorry, guys, just one more comment. Because I left it out. When I talk about kids that need to be in school, I fear there's some kids in this community that are lost. I want to make sure we can find a way to engage them and get them back. To me, that's one of the most important things. Those are the kids that need to be in school. And I do know and have heard stories of some lost young people out there, and I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thanks, Rusty. Anyone else? Okay, well, we'll be expecting a copy of that presentation, and then board members, if you have any other comments that you want to make, please send those to me. I'll forward them on, and I took notes on all the items that were mentioned tonight, and I'm sure others did too. So thank you for a very informative presentation. I think we all learned a lot.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate the questions and the feedback.
Okay, we'll go on with our agenda to our comments and communications section. And our first stop is comments from citizens. Michelle Karpinski, our reader, is going to read the comments to us. And I should let everybody know that we have email copies of all of the comments that were made as well. And anyway, with that, Michelle, it's all up to you.
Okay, thank you. We do have 32 comments tonight. And just a reminder to folks that for our purposes tonight, we are sticking to the 450 word limit. So if any of those comments have exceeded that amount, they can be rest assured that those have all been forwarded to the board in their entirety. So in case anybody wonders why their entire comment wasn't read, that's why. So our first one comes from Sarah Miller. She's a Portage Northern High School teacher for 21 years. Dear Portage Public School Board members, I hope that you are not aware of the current proposal for Return to Learn, because if you are, then I'm deeply disappointed in your support for teachers and communicating the truth to the community. This school year has been hard on everyone. There are many issues with the expectations and work at the elementary level, which I hope someone with firsthand experiences shines some light on. The virtual learning plan at the high school has been more than hard, but at least teachers and students are safer. The teachers have gone above and beyond to make this work. The public does not realize what goes into virtual teaching. It's not just standing in front of a computer and delivering a lesson. The current curriculum is not made for virtual teaching, nor have the teachers or students given enough time to figure out how virtual works. What has changed in the current pandemic that has led to a massive shift to hybrid? Why is the hybrid plan pushed out, not the one that was voted on and decided upon before school started? Teachers will be expected to teach all virtual students, face-to-face students, and at-home students all at the same time and at the same pace. This is not possible. Students will not be getting the personal attention when returning to school. They will basically be virtual, but at school. The number of contacts at the secondary level alone are not safe, and this will help spread the virus. The ability to clean is not realistic, nor are the supplies and personnel put in place. With the beginning of flu season, 2 major holidays in second quarter, why the rush to hybrid? It seems like second semester will be a better time to look into face-to-face learning. When that time arrives, there should be input from all involved and not a top-down decision. Believe me, teachers do want students back in the classroom. However, we want them back when it is safe for all of those involved. The second comment comes from Katie Painich. My name is Katie Painich. I'm a teacher at Portage Northern High School. These questions are regarding the proposed changes to the secondary instruction starting November 2nd. Number 1, what scientific data is supporting the return to a hybrid face-to-face instruction model at the secondary level? What has changed with the coronavirus situation in the state of Michigan since school started? Please respond to these questions directly without obfuscation. What is the pedagogical justification for this change? While we can all agree that in-person instruction is a preferred method for teachers, students, and parents alike, parents and other stakeholders do not seem to understand that the district is asking secondary teachers to teach in-person and online simultaneously. There are no virtual secondary teachers in the proposed plan like we have for the elementary level. This means that secondary teachers will run in-person hybrid classes the same time as the all-year virtual class. In other words, we will have to teach live to a small group of students from the in-person cohorts while broadcasting that same lesson to those who opt to stay home for the year-round virtual learning. I would also have to create asynchronous lessons for when in-person cohorts are at home. What does this mean logistically? I will have to monitor my in-person students' behavior and questions, as well as those to whom I'm broadcasting via webcam at the same time. This means that all students will get less attention from me as their teacher. As I see it right now, the only way for me to provide any semblance of equitable instruction is for me to stay seated at my desk and deliver instruction from there so that I can field questions from all students, both in person and via chat. So that begs the question, why bother at all with in-person instruction if the best mode is for me to treat it as though everyone were still at home? Even without these logistical constraints, it also seems that parents do not understand that school will not be normal at this time. Teachers will be unable to provide the support that we have in the past due to the pandemic and the safety measures that need to be taken to ensure everyone's safety. There will be no circulating in the classroom or stopping at student desks to look over their work because that would violate the 6-foot social distancing guidelines designed to keep us safe. Please help me understand why PPS is changing course without teacher input when we had a clear plan of action. Virtual learning would continue until phase 5. The next comment comes from Karen Cody. I apologize if I mispronounced that. 3273 Lost Pine Way. To the PPS administration, I am the parent of 2 juniors at Portage Northern High School. My children are doing well with the online teaching schedule that you've set up, although I'm certainly concerned about the amount of screen time they have each day. In regards to the proposed hybrid learning plan, I would strongly urge you not to adopt this plan. It seems like you will be stretching your teachers in 2 different directions. They will not be able to give enough attention to either of the groups who are attending classes, whether in person or virtually. The teachers have been trained and planned for online learning and are doing a good job. I request we continue online learning as it is now and not adopt a hybrid model at this time. Our next one comes from Kim Palmer. She's also a teacher at Portage Schools. Good evening. My name is Kim Palmer. I have served PPS for 27 years. This year has been the most challenging of my career. My health is being impacted. I'm writing tonight with concern about the hybrid model that is being recommended by the upper administration for quarter 2. Teachers are giving their whole hearts to deliver quality education to their students in this challenging time. While I'm working harder than ever and was filled with panic this summer with last-minute plans and few answers, I'm discovering I can teach online. My students and I are becoming a great team and learning what it takes to make this work with fewer than 15 days under our belts. While we know an in-person education is best, I would rather not risk my life or theirs on empty promises of cleanliness and social distancing. More importantly, bringing students back in a hybrid model is not the best practice for their learning. Suggesting this is as good a model of instruction without asking or consulting the professionals doing the work is very upsetting. We are all working to our max, and the stress that we have been under to pull this fall off has not been considered in any way. The thought of having to develop another completely new mode of instruction so soon is beyond comprehension. Our students deserve 100% of our attention. This will not be possible in a hybrid model. I cannot possibly be effective in a situation where I'm expected to manage 3 possible groups of students. My classes are not balanced. It's possible that in a class I would have 10 students attend one day and 23 the next due to the A through K, L through Z division that is being suggested. I cannot safely social distance in my classroom with 23 students. All but one of my classes have 32 students. I see close to 180 students a day. I cannot effectively teach online students with a mask on while teaching students in person. Please don't ask your teachers to plan for another completely new mode of instruction that we know as professionals not best practice. Please do not ask us to do this and not be effective for our students. Please don't ask us to do this with no answers or proper planning. We should not be asked to figure this out as we go when we are just starting to figure out online. Please don't ask us to return to a hybrid model at the height of the cold and flu season, just before the holidays, without concrete plans and keep kids and teachers healthy. Our next comment is from Amanda Thorpe. She lives at 1007 Josane Drive in Kalamazoo. I'm writing tonight. My name is Dr. Amanda Thorpe, and I'm writing tonight as a PPS teacher, coach, and parent. I've been a coach in this district since I first graduated high school and a teacher since I first graduated college. When I had my own children, I brought them into Portage schools of choice, despite living in a neighboring high-achieving district, because I firmly and unshakably believe in the work that we did here. That faith and trust began to erode throughout the return to learn process this summer and is all but gone now, when we have been told out of the blue that we would be transitioning to a hybrid plan that is not in line with the best practice or suggested health and safety protocols. Aside from the significant legal, moral, and ethical concerns that this plan raises, including teacher involvement, specific concerns around equity, the most disturbing part for me is that it was completely set in stone without parent or teacher involvement, and despite concerns raised by building administrators. As a teacher and as a parent, I wasn't even aware that face-to-face return was a possibility, and I serve my colleagues as a district team leader. I found out the same day as a team leader and as a teacher that the plan was already been decided, and as a parent, I have yet to be notified by the district. This is not acceptable. As a public school, it is our job to serve the community. We can't tell a diverse group of parents, students, administrators, any return to learn plan needs to be a collaborative of diverse group of parents, students, administrators, teachers, and support staff. When a change is made, the why needs to be transparent. And in this case, we have been not told why the shift is necessary, when our understanding was that hybrid would not be a discussion, at least until the governor moved our region to phase 5. Furthermore, building level communication from parents on our virtual work has been overwhelmingly positive. After the why, the how needs to be well articulated, and the school board needs to hold the district accountable for all of the elements therein being fulfilled, which did not happen with the current return to learn plan. A hybrid plan right now would bring 600 kids into the buildings with no drinking water, crossing their path 7 times, and seat them in classrooms where 6 feet spacing would be a luxury in some and an impossibility in others. Meanwhile, other learners will be learning virtually, but in the building in secluded spaces, and a 4th group of learners will be completing their work virtually at home. Our next comment comes from Kat Frank, Portage Central High School teacher. Dear Board of Trustees, Superintendent Beeling, and administrative team, make no mistake about it, teaching remotely is hard. Many of us feel like new teachers navigating this virtual world, but we are doing it, and we are all getting better at it every day. We're continuing to find ways to connect with kids through engaging discussions, activities, and interactive platforms. I have been using Pear Deck in my Physics 1 class, which allows me which allows students to actively participate with me and each other during class in a way that enhances learning and engagement. Instead of hands-on labs, my colleagues and I have researched and found simulations for students. I'm grateful for my students' willingness to learn these new platforms and for my colleagues selfishly sharing ideas and resources. I currently teach 4 different courses. Although remote teaching is challenging, I've been able to completely adjust what I used to do in all 4 of these classes to fit our virtual mode of instruction. It has been and continues to be time-consuming, but I know helping keep kids, their families, and students safe. I'm concerned with the proposed changes to the second marking period, which gives students the option to attend face-to-face. Why are we changing modes of instruction when we're still in phase 4? As for me, my 4 preps will essentially become 8 as I start over again and prepare 2 simultaneous modes of instruction. I don't know how I will equitably balance interacting with my in-person and remote students at the same time. One of these groups will lose under this proposed plan. As for my colleagues, we're already working as hard and as much as we possibly can. Many of us feel like this workload will increase and will not be manageable and are considering leaving PPS to teach elsewhere safely online. As for my students, I don't know how I will be able to socially distance them in my classroom, considering I have 2-person tables and my largest class has 35 enrolled. PPS chose not to implement other safety measures such as cohorting and balancing hybrid groups, which would have lessened the risk of COVID for students and staff. Per our most recent letter of agreement, how will our small custodial staff be able to meet the legal requirement of cleaning desks and other high-touch surfaces between each class? How will we be able to spread out the students at lunch when they are all in the cafeteria with no masks on? We all want to return to face-to-face instruction, but returning while in phase 4 with masks as our only safety measure is irresponsible. Sincerely. Our next comment comes from Grace Freed. Dear school board members, do you have kids? You, the person reading this, do you have kids? I'm a kid, a junior at Northern, and I can tell you right now, switching to a hybrid plan for the second marking period is a terrible idea. There hasn't been enough talk about safety precautions for cleaning and social distancing in general, but on top of that, the timing is horrible. We could be going right back before 2 major holidays where people from around the state and country will gather indoors as it will be cold. I have the ability to stay home and will continue to learn virtually, which I would do due to the lack of safety I already know will not be there. If I stay virtual, while even just some of my peers go back, my quality of education will suffer. I am an IB student going for the diploma, and if my teachers have to go between teaching in class and virtually, everyone will be at a disadvantage, with people learning virtually having bigger loss due to the missing in-class activities such as labs. Knowing I would have to go back to get a better education if this is an option, I would feel forced to go back against my will and risk my own, my teachers, and my peers' health. It seems as though the administration only cares about getting people back to school as fast as possible and not about the safety of kids or teachers. If our district cannot get together and figure out how to do late starts when the weather is bad, how will you bring kids and teachers back safely this soon? Sincerely, Grace Freed. Our next comment comes from Joseph Wood. As both a PPS parent and teacher, I have researched different school models closely. In July, I was convinced that a hybrid system was like the one proposed by PPS was the best compromise. But then epidemiologist Larry Bryant convinced me otherwise. He pointed out that the hybrid model was the worst possible model when it comes to containing the virus, because it produces more links between schools and families along which the virus can travel. Stories from districts that are currently running the hybrid model are that it is hard to get students to buy into the idea that they are in school on their 3 at-home learning days. Anyone with memories of April knows this is not the direction we want to go. The hybrid system comes from good intentions, but in practice is bad for safety and would set us back educationally. Please do not do that to our kids and our community. Joseph lived at 7140 Green Forest Drive in Portage. Our next comment comes from Vicki Hoover, 5675 Tradewind Drive. With a month of school behind us, perhaps you've been told that the year is off to a smooth start. But I wonder if you've taken the time to dive deeper, as Mr. Huber often urges us to do. Here are some questions you might ask. Ask a teacher how their year is going. Teachers are near our breaking point because of the increased stress we are under. Virtual teachers are putting in 10 to 12-hour days trying to keep up with the needs of 40-plus students while creating engaging lessons for young students not used to learning this way. Face-to-face teachers are dealing with concern for our own health, in addition to students who struggle with keeping masks on. We are all concerned about students' mental health, but have you shown any concern for the mental health of teachers? You were told that an average classroom numbers are 16. Have you asked how many classrooms are in the 20s? Have you seen some classrooms so full of desks there's no room for students to move around in the room or engage in developmentally appropriate learning? Why is it okay that only some classrooms in some schools have low student numbers? Is the safety of some students more important than others? We are now told that as some students transition back to face-to-face, there will be no class size limits. Will families who counted on your plan to keep smaller class sizes be informed of this? Ask a teacher how much of our own money we have spent this fall to make classrooms safer for students. On top of the hundreds of dollars we spend in a normal year to purchase materials for our classrooms, most teachers I know have spent hundreds of dollars on top of that this year to purchase supplies so that students can have individual materials that aren't shared. If teachers hadn't done this, who would have? Ask a teacher if there's anything we need, either to make our classrooms safer or to ease our stress. Ask a teacher how daily cleaning is going. In the 14 days we've had school, my classroom was not cleaned on 2 occasions. On 2 other days, the desk surfaces weren't clean. The chairs, which I would consider high-touch surfaces with little hands touching them all day, have never been sanitized to my knowledge. As we wait for new GRBS staff to work out the kinks, our safety is at stake. With the surveys recently sent out to parents, more change will be coming. Before these changes are implemented, you might be surprised at the valuable input you would get if you just asked a teacher. Our next comment comes from Gretchen Doreen. It says, good morning. I'm a parent of 2 children in the district and a teacher in the district. I'm asking you to reconsider the Return to Learn plan that proposes the secondary schools return November 2nd. Number 1, what scientific data is supporting the return to a hybrid face-to-face instruction model at the secondary level? What has changed with the coronavirus situation in the state of Michigan since school has started? Starting in November and December, people will be inside more and traveling to visit family for the holidays. Wouldn't it make more sense to start looking at a plan that brings us back to school at the end of the semester in late January? 2, what is the pedagogical justification for this change? While we can all agree that in-person instruction is the preferred method for teachers and students, we are not living through normal times. A hybrid model would have secondary teachers teaching in-class students and virtual students at the same time. There's no way for a teacher to be attentive to all the students' needs at once. There are no virtual secondary teachers in the proposed plan like we have for the elementary level. Right now, all of the teachers' attention is focused on all of the students we are teaching virtually. As a parent of virtual students, it makes me really frustrated to think that my student will be at home and never get to interact with their actual teacher. Currently, my 6th grade student has made great connections with his teachers at North Middle School, but there's no way for those connections to grow if teachers are pulled in too many directions. The teachers in this district have pulled together and are providing an excellent education to students and are being asked to figure it out again without guidance from the district administration. If hybrid is something the district and parents want, let's work together to formulate a safe and successful plan to start the beginning of the next semester. This would give us time and resources to work on scheduling and staffing changes. Please help me understand why PPS is changing course without teacher input and when we had a clear plan of action. Virtual learning would continue until phase 5. The next comes from Lisa Bucklinger Aldridge. She resides at 1101 Prairie Avenue in Kalamazoo. I've been teaching in PPS since 1998. I'm getting in touch today with concerns about the proposed plan to return to face-to-face instruction / hybrid plan slated for November 2nd. First and foremost, our health is the basis for every other activity in which we participate. As a person who has been sidelined by a life-threatening illness, I can tell you that without good health, everything else we value is at risk. Experience with a life-threatening illness makes me familiar with the isolation and being unable to participate fully in life. I understand deeply the emotional difficulty involved in being cut off from the life I wanted, the life from before. It was the price I had to pay in order to bolster my chances at a full recovery. The same is true for us as a community at this time. My experience with cancer was not preventable. It was simply a case of bad luck. An experience with COVID-19 is something that can be prevented by keeping distance, limiting social contacts, and remaining isolated. I believe that asking students and teachers to risk exposure by returning to the classroom in November is foolhardy and dangerous. Our school board meets virtually due to potential risk. Extreme limits are placed on entry into businesses due to potential risk. Our administration is asking us to engage in the primary activity that we are told by health professionals to avoid. Secondly, as a teacher, I'm dismayed by the fact that these changes were revealed to us on the 15th day of the school year. Please respect us as professionals by allowing us the opportunity to settle into a routine and build our skills in this new environment. I like teaching virtually, and I've been grateful to be able to do my job in a low-risk environment, a situation that I am sad to say has not been afforded to our elementary staff. Making this drastic change without consultation with your PPS teaching staff is professionally and emotionally destabilizing and demoralizing to the entire secondary staff, as well as to students and families. The proposed plan has the potential to require twice the work of staff without any allowance for the additional planning and work time necessary to dispatch our responsibilities. The proposed work conditions are brutally unsustainable, shortchange students and families, and ignore the realities of the pandemic, as well as the limit of human capabilities in terms of what is being asked of your teaching staff. Please allow the current teaching and learning conditions to remain in place until Michigan has entered phase 5, respectfully. Our next comes from Matt Tabor. He lives at 10318 Rogers Street. Through the late spring and most of the summer, the plan was for secondary to be in a hybrid model. Seemingly at the last moment, administration decided that an all virtual model would be the safest way for us to start the fall. There is obviously concern about students' learning and mental well-being in an all virtual environment. We knew those concerns in the summer, yet some other concerns kept us from continuing in a hybrid model. Is there a clear idea of why that decision was made? And what has changed since then that now allows us to move to a hybrid model? I don't feel those questions have been answered, and they should be before you approve any plan. We've continued with an all virtual model, and staff, teachers, and students are making all virtual work. Of course, this hasn't been easy for anyone, but I hope you realize the amazing work everyone is doing. Given such a short time to completely change the way we teach and learn, I think everyone has been more than successful. Obviously, it would be best to go back to normal, but that's not the world we live in right now. I can't think of anything that's normal. I'm sure there are people that don't have positive feelings about virtual learning, but please don't think that's the way everyone feels just because those unhappy people are the most vocal. Does everyone realize that a part of what makes virtual work will be taken away by moving to a hybrid? Virtual learning requires a teacher's full attention and planning. Having students in the room will immediately take precedence, moving teachers' attention and focus to the students in the room and away from those students in the virtual environment. Don't forget that even if we move to a hybrid model and some students choose to come into the building, there will still be virtual students the majority of the week. For students struggling with virtual learning, this is only going to make the situation worse. Lastly, what is the actual full plan with all the details addressed and the questions answered? It's easy to say, let's bring the students back. Yes, but now what and how? Students' learning and everyone's health is at risk. This is no time for a plan that is only a general idea given to the schools and left for them to figure out the details. Administration needs to take responsibility for this plan and present a complete plan before you ever give consideration to approve it. Thank you for your time and attention. Our next comes from Richard Doreen. Says, good morning. I've heard that there are plans to offer a hybrid approach for Portage students in 6th through 12th grade, and that these plans are likely to happen very quickly. As a parent of 2 kids in the district with a wife as a teacher, I have many concerns as outlined below. 1, having middle or high school students go to school in a hybrid model is very different from having elementary kids go to school, even if class sizes are cut by half and having them go 2 days a week. The biggest reason is because they don't stay in the same class. So this increases their exposure risk not only by several orders of magnitude based on the number of classes they have, 6 times to 8 times, but also by several orders of magnitude during the passing time between classes. I'm unclear what has changed about the start of the school year that we now warrant this change. Governor Whitmer has not moved us to phase 5 that in my eyes could justify such a change. In fact, data in Kalamazoo County would indicate there is an upward trend in cases, especially when compared to the start of the school year. Number 3, I'll assume for now that I'm missing the evidence data that warrants a potential change to a hybrid model. Now I'm curious on the timing. With only using the current plan for 1 month, why switch now? The teachers and students are just starting to get used to virtual learning and teaching. Both groups are finally getting over the initial learning curve of using the current technology to make the original plan start to work for them. Both groups are starting to know exactly what's expected of them. So now all of a sudden that will change. Classroom dynamics, classwork, class sizes, etc. will all change just as everyone was settling into a new normal. It seems like a change at the end of the quarter or semester would make more sense. 4, my fourth concern impacts both my child and my wife. Our household will likely continue to choose virtual learning options since we have someone in our house with health risk and is above the age 70. I'm trying to picture my son's teacher trying to teach students in the classroom while also trying to teach a second set of students in the hybrid model and also trying to teach a third set of students who are 100% virtual. I'm worried my child will be left out and left behind. Teachers already have a hard time understanding which kids are needing help when all of them are online. Now the teacher will have to monitor and cater to 3 different student groups. My immediate inclination is that the students in the room at the time or in the room later in the week will get more attention. That seems extremely unfair for both the student and the teacher. Christine Stamper is our next commenter. And she says, dear members of the school board, my name is Christine Stamper. As a Portage resident and graduate of Portage Public Schools, I'm invested in the health and wellness of our community, teachers, and students. I'm writing to you today to express my frustration and disappointment regarding the sudden decision to shift to a hybrid model at the secondary level starting November 2nd. Below, I have detailed some of my concerns regarding this plan, and I encourage you to vote no on this plan at tomorrow's board meeting. Data. I know that the district is a big believer in data and what the numbers can show us. So the biggest question on everyone's mind right now is this: what has changed? What scientific data is supporting the return to a hybrid face-to-face instruction model at the secondary level? Although Governor Whitmer has eased restrictions in some areas, such as allowing movie theaters and bowling alleys to open, she has also made masks obligatory at the K-5 level in our region when before it had just been a recommendation. Furthermore, Michigan's Chief Deputy for Health, Dr. Calhoun, said, we are in a precarious moment in our fight against COVID-19 in a press conference on September 25th because of the approaching flu season. Are the weeks leading up to the flu season really the best time to gather 700 plus students in the middle school and high schools? The PPS administration made a clear and definitive decision over the summer. While our region stays in phase 4, secondary instruction will remain virtual. There are no clear indications from the state of Michigan that we are anywhere near phase 5, and yet without any reason why we are suddenly shifting the plan. Pedagogy. As someone who has taught at the post-secondary level, I can only imagine the challenges that secondary teachers are going through at this time. Online-only education is certainly not the preferred method of instruction, but changing the type of instruction as students are starting to understand expectation is setting them up for failure. Additionally, I have heard from many Portage secondary teachers, and all have expressed dismay at what is being asked for them in this hybrid model. Monitoring 2 sets of students, 1 in person and 1 hybrid simultaneously, is untenable and unfair. I hope you take the needs of PPS student staff and the health of the greater community into your decision-making process and vote no on this plan. Our next comment comes from Rachel Budnick, and she is a high school student who's concerned about the safety of our community. I'm currently a senior at Portage Northern High School. While considering back to school options, I think it is important to consider and weigh all of the options. Personally, I've had to quarantine more than once since school has started. The majority of students want to go back to school for the second quarter, but I believe that the earliest we should go back to in-person learning is the beginning of the second semester. If we went back to school, we would have to consider the possibilities of the virus circulating around the community. I think that students are so eager to have personal interactions that some are forgetting the severity of the virus. Therefore, some students may not be honest when it comes to keeping everyone healthy. For example, some students may not be feeling well or may have been in contact with someone who has it or possibly has it and still come to school. There's no way that staff can ensure these students are being honest when they say they have not been in contact with anyone with the virus or if they're feeling well. Further, if someone is being honest and is quarantining or has a virus, they may have a disadvantage to students that are able to go in person. Classmates and I have agreed that online school brings more work and stress than in person. It's fair for those who are quarantining. Is it fair for those who are quarantining and or have the virus to be put at a disadvantage? I am someone who loves personal and social interactions. I'm also a senior who's devastated that I cannot have the senior year that I always dreamed of. I miss my teachers, my classmates, and my friends. But when it comes to the safety of students and staff and their families, these social interactions can wait. Who knows what the numbers of the virus will look like in October, November, and December. Even though online school may be more stressful and more work for students, safety is the overall concern. Safety should always come first, and right now it is better to be safe than sorry. Our next comment comes from Carrie Quinn, 7th and 8th grade science teacher in Schoolcraft. Dear board members, my daughter is a sophomore at Portage Northern High School. I've heard that PPS is considering going hybrid soon. My daughter is doing well with online. The teachers have been doing a great job at PN. If hybrid is adopted, please also allow an online to happen as well. If my daughter is assigned her hybrid days and isn't with her friends, then she will most likely want to continue with all online. If hybrid happens, you will want to have online only teachers. It is too much for one teacher to have hybrid and online at the same time. Thank you, Carrie Quinn.
Michelle, how are you doing? Would you like to take a rest? You've been reading for a little over a half an hour.
Sure, I could take a break and get some water. That'd be great.
Okay, why don't we go forward then and start with our consent agenda, and we'll come back later and pick up comments and communications and comments by board trustees. Is that acceptable to everyone?
That's
Sure.
a good plan, Randy.
Sure,
Okay.
Randy.
Okay, good. Let's go to the consent agenda. On page 8, we have two things tonight: minutes from the September 14th, 2020 Committee of the Whole work session and also the closed session. Are there any exceptions to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Our next item this evening is on page 16. It's the National School Lunch Week Proclamation. Is there a motion, please?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education approve the National School Lunch Week Proclamation as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Celeste, would somebody volunteer to read the proclamation, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Let me get to that spot here. Okay. Proclamation National School Lunch Week, October 12 to 16, 2020. Whereas it is with great respect for the accomplishments of Portage's school food service leads, servers, cashiers, and driver personnel and substitutes that we commemorate October 12 to 16, 2020 as National School Lunch Week. During this special observance, we encourage all citizens to recognize the dedication and skill of our food service employees. And whereas each day, food service employees prepare and serve thousands of lunches, this is in addition to ordering, storing, and expediting each menu item to each location, adhering to food safety, sanitation, and nutritional guidelines, as well as giving each customer the time and consideration to listen, hear, and deliver what they are looking for each day. Fortunately, we have exemplary professionals who have devoted their careers to providing high-quality service to our children and staff. And whereas, on behalf of our students and staff, it is a pleasure to commend the women and men who accept and meet the challenges of school food service. The observance of School Lunch Week is a welcome opportunity to thank these patient, caring, skilled public servants. Those involved in this pursuit should be very proud of their contribution to education. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education that we proudly commemorate October 12 to 16, 2020 as National School Lunch Week, and we commend everyone who has contributed to the successful operation of our lunch program. By working together, we can make a difference in every student's life. Proclaim this 28th day of September 2020, Portage Public Schools Board of Education.
Thank you, Terry, and we'd be remiss if we didn't thank Susan Livingston and her staff for all the work they're doing, and I'm sure it's being done much differently than it was a year ago. So thank you very much. We appreciate what you do.
Hey, Randy. I'm sorry, it's Rusty here. I just want to.
Yep.
I just want to add one thing. I think the board needs to understand too. On Thursdays, kids don't have school on Friday, so that these people are making lunches and breakfasts for Thursday and Friday, and they're keeping it up. I mean, they're working their fingers to the bone, and I just wanted to add that as my appreciation for their hard work.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Anyone else?
Randy, I would just chime in that these people are working in the summer too, helping kids in our community have nutritious meals in the summer. So our appreciation.
Very good. I have a feeling this proclamation motion is going to pass. Could you take the roll call vote, please, Barb?
Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson. Mr. Rathburn?
Yes.
Dr. Shelton Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Van Antwerp?
Yes.
Mrs. Novaria?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Droppers?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. The motion passes. And now we have a discussion item, policy revisions on page 28. I believe Mark has some information for it.
Yes, board. These are 5 operational policies that are coming to you as a first reading. Most of these changes are revisions to existing policies. The first one with threatening behavior towards staff members, we have a policy towards our professional staff. This one extends the same policy to our support staff members. There are also several other policy recommendation changes that some of the language came about because of changes in the law. The preponderance of evidence standard is one of those for regarding students. We have one on facility security, which allows us to temporarily use door locking devices when deemed necessary. And then also a policy that backs us on students wearing facial coverings as our policies, as the situation and circumstances warrant. So those are the 5 policies that are being brought for approval. And again, if anyone would like to see those policies in their entirety, they're available here at the central office. Be happy to answer any questions.
Hearing no questions for you, Mark. Great job. We'll go back to our comments and communications section and resume public comment, I believe, with comment number 17.
You are correct, sir. Here we go. Dear esteemed PPS school board members, you know me. I'm Amy DiMaggio, 23 years PPS, Portage Northern High School veteran teacher and counselor. I taught all levels of Spanish and was here at IB's inception for 9 years. I've been in a leadership role in counseling for 14 years. Not only have I led my building counseling colleagues, but I have been the district team leader for over 10 years. You know me. Out of the 7 school board members, I was the Spanish teacher for 4 of your children. I've been the school counselor for 2 of your children. You know PN teachers. You know we are tireless, fierce, determined, engaged, passionate, and we never give up. You know that we have thrived as a teaching staff community in the face of adversity for the last number of years. You know that we persevere. So I ask you, I implore you, please consider what is best for student and teacher learning and social emotional well-being. Please listen to the teachers you've known for over 20 years. The teaching community is not overreacting at this point. The hybrid model is not what's even remotely best for any student, not one learner. Where is the data to show that this instructional model is founded in pedagogy best practices? Where is the data to show the hybrid model will have more success than the current virtual options in place? Where's the data that is proving that the current virtual model is not working for students? How will teachers continue to deliver a robust curriculum and address different cohorts within the same limited time of the school day? Why? Why now? To whom is PPS answering? Who is requesting the hybrid model or shift? It's certainly not the teachers. How will we respond to the health and safety protocols and increased technology demands when we fold in 600 more students into our buildings? Where will the PPE come from? What about increased class sizes, more student bodies in small areas without the proper 6-foot distance? When more students are required or encouraged to attend in building? What about our already stretched beyond belief bandwidth and technology limitations? How are our parents to make an educated decision about the mode of instruction that's best for their child if those plans haven't been developed or shared with the community? The lack of transparency is disheartening and unprofessional. The hurried push to move to yet another model without data to back up any change is not best practices. Thank you for taking the time to read my message. Most respectfully and sincerely, Amy Jo. Our next comment comes from Matthew Caramango, 2501 Portside Avenue. Board members, I'm currently teaching virtual 4th grade. I can assure you it's difficult enough to keep virtual learners engaged, moving through curriculum, without also trying to teach, manage, and support a classroom of in-person learners. It is easily the most exhausting form of teaching I've ever done in my career, but I understand that taking on this extra work helps keep our community safe. Any plan that requires secondary teachers to teach virtually and face-to-face at the same time is simply not practical and will not result in any quality educational outcomes. Even with the inevitable technical problems, behavior flare-ups, and other issues that can or cannot be foreseen, it is not reasonable to expect teachers to be able to split their attention between groups that will require wholly different strategies to reach. This plan will also result in greater risks of viral outbreaks while the state is still in phase 4. The board would do well to seek more input from teachers before deciding on any changes to instructional delivery. Our next comes from Nicole Harlow, who lives on Golden Ridge Trail in Portage. Members of the Board of Education and Administration, I'm the mother of 3 PPS students. I have a freshman at Portage Northern and an 8th and 6th grader at West Middle. All 3 of my students are in PPS virtual from home and have had good success with the program so far. While no virtual program can replace face-to-face interactions with teachers, I feel that PPS has done a good job with their secondary virtual program. My students are engaged and learning and building relationships with their classmates. I would like the board and administration to consider carefully the implications of resuming face-to-face instruction while continuing to support virtual learners. Please ensure that any face-to-face options which are offered will not detract from the quality interaction of 100% virtual learners that they are receiving. All students, whether in person or virtual, are entitled to equal interaction with their teachers, and I'm very concerned that a shift toward face-to-face instruction will adversely impact those who remain virtual. I'm also concerned supporting both in-person and virtual students simultaneously will create an undue burden on the teachers that would encourage all involved to actively seek out solutions to support the teachers if this transition to face-to-face learning occurs. Thank you. Cecilia Weeks is our next commenter from Portage Northern High School, Director of Theater and Forensics and the JV Boys Tennis Coach. Dear administration and board members, as a parent, I made the very difficult decision to withdraw my own elementary age students from PPS and send them to private school because the plan for elementary was 1, very poorly communicated, 2, very unsafe. To emphasize poor communication, I should make you aware that we withdrew our children in person and followed up with an email to the elementary principal. Just today, I received a phone call asking if my children were going to continue face-to-face for next semester. Clearly, my children are still in the system, so why haven't they contacted me to ask where my kids are and where they've been? They are just now contacting to see if they are going to stay virtual, even though we took them out. The lack of organization in the district right now is mind-boggling. So when we now add to that the notion that we're going to bring high schools into a hybrid mode makes me incredibly upset and anxious as a teacher. Here are my reasons. The district is not prepared with technology. Classes will not be split equally. For example, my third hour has 17 in A through K and 8 in L through Z. We have not answered how we will keep teachers and students safe. The cleaning is not effective. Cases are on the rise in this age group. This will not be equitable. My attention will be split and my focus will most likely go to the students in the room. A survey was put out after the decision is set to be made. Please don't ask us for our opinion if you're not willing to listen to what we have to say. Thank you for your time, and thank you in advance for listening and addressing the concerns of your teachers who will actually be doing the job for which you are making up the rules. Cecilia Weeks, disappointed parent and incredibly nervous teacher. Our next comes from Joanna Toth. She's a reading intervention and ELA teacher at Portage North Middle School. Greetings, PPS board members. Over the weekend, there was some collaboration among North Middle School staff that included listing our questions about how to safely handle face-to-face instruction at North Middle School. I would like to share these questions with you so that the details are planned for before the students return, as we want to be sure students and the staff are safe from this virus. Here are the questions we have. I've also attached them should it be an easier format to read. As of now, we have been unable to access the answer to these questions. Number one, what safety measures are being taken and being put in place to protect employees who are either at risk themselves or who live with at-risk loved ones? Number two, who will clean the classrooms if a teacher is sensitive to the cleaning agent and unable to do so without having a physical reaction? Number three, will the 10-minute passing periods remain in place so cleaning can take place? If so, who will monitor the students? Where will the students be during this time so physical distancing is maintained? 4, where will the students who are in building now go for internet and food go on the days they are told not to go to school? Will their education not take place on any other day than the 2 days they are in the classroom? Or will they be absorbed into the groups of students reporting on A and B days, i.e. attending all days? This would essentially allow any and all families to choose full-time face-to-face instruction regardless of the circumstances, and it would increase the number of students in the school and in the classrooms. What has changed in the science that led to the decision to change the original plan to stay remote until Michigan is in phase 5? If this change is due to the pressure from parents who are not scientists, how can you assure PPS employees of their safety during their employment hours on site? Number 6, what is the benefit to the students' education to send them back into the classroom? There will be no social interaction, and students will be more restricted within the buildings than they are in their homes. This is evident by how it is for secondary students presently. Number 7, how can we assure that parents are not sending their children to school with COVID? There have been recent news stories reporting parents sending their students to school knowing they have COVID. What screening measures will be in place to assure PPS community that the students will not be sitting next to a student with COVID? Our next comment comes from Christopher Furlong. Members of the Board of Education, tonight, I would like to thank a few people that are making a difference in the district and being honest with us. Ron Herron for helping us understand the cleaning process and answering email when sent to him with thought. Next, our principals at Northern High School for also being honest with us about the plan you're going to hear about tonight that will not work. What has changed? We are still in phase 4. The cases have not gone down enough to get to phase 5, and you, as a school board, voted to stay in virtual until phase 4 is over, and thus it is safer for us to return. I can go face-to-face, but that was not the original plan. The plan at this point, without clear guidance, is to bring kids back to school and let them be in our rooms while staring at a computer screen all day. This is not face-to-face, this is babysitting. At this point, I would like to invite you to come to my classroom and watch me teach for 1 hour, and then tell me you think going back to face-to-face is a good idea. I would guess that none of you will show up considering you are unable or unwilling to meet in person for this meeting tonight. Come see my struggles with what you're asking me to do. Tell me you have the resources I need. Show me the research that said having 40 K through 5 students in a virtual classroom at one time is a good idea. Tell me how planning 2 weeks out from the onset of a new plan is the right thing to do. All that has been mentioned continues to happen with no direction on how to do it because you have people in place that have no idea what to do or how to set it up. I've not received any plan at this point. I've been given very little information other than a directive that it will happen. We have a highly effective superintendent, and yet he has no understanding for the struggles that teachers face every day in this environment, nor has he assembled a team that can come up with a clear plan for how this will work. We have a curriculum team that listens to a selected population for guidance, not looking for a more diverse set of examples. They should be focusing their efforts on seeking out many schools and individuals for guidance. I would ask that our curriculum team explore more options and diverse populations to guide their decisions and practices. Our next comes from Adrian. She only gives her email address. Hello, I'm both a proud teacher and a parent of Portage Public School District. I have 2 college students who graduated from Portage Northern and an 8th grade student at West Middle School. My son and many other students have lamented their wish to be back in school, and I echo their sentiments wholeheartedly. However, such a return puts lives at stake and increases anxiety levels of both students and staff to the extent that learning is halted. It's a nonsensical move. A return to classroom due to social pressure does not address the scientific probability models that suggest that spikes of COVID-19 are likely beginning in the fall. The shortage of subs that we faced at the middle school level was deeply problematic before temporary work in a school became a high-risk venture. This year, several teachers in my department alone were able to offer uninterrupted instruction and support to their students when the health department sent a letter suggesting a 14-day quarantine. They weren't sick, but making a responsible move to prevent the spread of the disease. What happens when, not if, this situation occurs again, and now classrooms will be left teacherless? What happens when teachers are truly sick with illness like the flu, which have typical surges in the fall and winter? It takes people at the organizational level months and years to become proficient with new teaching methods. In fact, as teachers, we were taught that it would take us years to adjust to professional learning communities, PLCs, with fidelity to the extent that they positively impact instruction, and more years to adjust to a new metric of our professional capabilities according to the 5 model. So it's logical to conclude that teachers will need time to run virtual classrooms with efficiency and success. Many teachers were reporting that they were just beginning to feel confidence and success while discovering what it takes to engage with students digitally. But according to the plan to be implemented on November 2nd, it would appear that now our attention will be divided between the students who will remain in our classrooms from home and students physically present in our rooms twice per week. However, now we will be addressing them all while wearing masks. Both students and teachers who desperately long to be back in the classroom in person can see that leaving our virtual students with a profile view of our masked face while we address the needs of students in our physical midst is not likely to improve the quality of instruction or reduce the risk of infection. In fact, the opposite would appear to be true on both counts. Our next comment comes from Sarah Baker, parent and district resident. Dear Portage Board of Education and Administration, I hope my message has already been addressed by Superintendent Beelang or Assistant Superintendent Pasco, but I continue to ask for an update be made for the community on anti-bias training for all staff. I requested an update on the auditing and improvement of student curriculum to address discrimination, and an update on hiring practices which will create a more inclusive culture and would reflect the student body. Portage Public Schools states a vision to be exceptional, continuously improving learning culture with high expectations committed to all. If you are making strides, again, to address racism and bias, please be transparent and share a report electronically, as well as sending a written report to all taxpayers. Regards, Sarah Baker. Our next comes from Sarah Kozian, teacher at Portage Northern High School. Dear members of the board, I am writing to you as a concerned stakeholder in Portage Public Schools. My husband and I are both secondary teachers here, and my kids proudly attend Mooresbridge before the pandemic hit. We are a family that loves living and working in this community. I am writing today with concerns and questions about the proposed hybrid program at the secondary level. The current plan would rush students and teachers into a hybrid design that none of us are prepared for. Under the proposed design, secondary teachers would be monitoring not only 2 hybrid groups, but a fully virtual group of students as well. As a secondary teacher, I can say that the best case scenario, the rigor of our classes will slow down considerably with teachers trying to manage 2 to 3 different learning environments at the same time. All students will likely get less attention from their teachers, not more. The need to monitor multiple groups will also decrease our ability to keep students socially distanced and follow safety protocols. We want to safely do the absolute best we can for our students, and rushing into this plan will not allow us to do that. Sincerely. Kelly Holdsworth is our next commenter. Dear members of the board, I write you today as a parent of both elementary and middle school students and as an informed, concerned community member. I urge you to be open-minded and thoughtful about the community feedback you are undoubtedly receiving, including my own. Bottom line, our PPS community feels let down. Our children's current and ongoing learning plans are poorly developed and implemented by the district. Communication from upper administration has been ineffective, poorly timed, and parent feedback seemingly ignored in the decision-making process. Teacher input has been disregarded and devalued in the same manner. I speak on behalf of so many families and educators who feel the same way, disappointed and disheartened, because as a district, PPS is better than this. Rather than focus on these grievances, I hope that you will find more value in looking toward the future, focusing on how to improve. I ask this of you, the board and PPS administration, as we move forward. Engage and listen to what our children's teachers have to say. Implement processes that support their feedback. They are the experts. Trust their knowledge as we trust them in the education and well-being of our children. Support our teachers and principals. Give them the tools and emotional support to do their job. Again, listen to what they say they need. Provide more transparency to the school community. Involve us. Help us understand what goes into the decision-making process and why decisions are made. This needs to occur at an administrative level beyond individual school buildings. Acknowledge when plans are unsuccessful. Keep us informed. Communicate with us better. This builds necessary trust. Implement improved ways to involve parents and seek feedback. Surveys should be ongoing and provide opportunity for open parent comment. Survey purpose should be cleared. Roundtables or other avenues that allow two-way discussions should be offered and utilized as a way to communicate more effectively. Commit to safety. My children want to go back to school, and I want them there, but it must be safe. We need to limit class sizes so that physical distance among students can be maintained. Stating that distancing will be done to the extent possible is not enough. These are difficult, challenging times for everyone. I appreciate the tremendous amount of time and effort that have gone into planning for the education of our children during these circumstances. However, I'm asking you to continue to find better, improved ways to meet the needs of our children, educators, and district community. As I said before, PPS is better than this. We can do better. Respectfully submitted. Our next one comes from Martha Keeler. She lives at 6427 Marlowe Street in Portage. I'm a math teacher at Portage Central High School and a parent of 2 PCHS graduates. This past month of virtual learning teaching has been challenging, and teachers have logged many hours planning and learning new ways of teaching and assessing. Personally, I've been pleased at the number of students that are attending my Google Meets and participating in class. Weekly, I have been surveying students on how they are doing, and the feedback has been positive. What we are doing is challenging and perhaps not ideal, but we're doing it to keep everyone safe. I'm distressed to hear that PPS is considering bringing students in grades 6 through 12 back in person as early as the second marking period. We were told we would stay virtual until our region reaches phase 5, and now we're going to back at a time when flu season is starting, which would only compound the health problems posed by COVID-19. Personally, I'm very concerned about being exposed to potentially hundreds of students who may be asymptomatic carriers of COVID-19. My husband is in the high-risk category for COVID-19, so I'm very fearful of contracting it and giving it to him, since it would likely kill him. While I understand that the elementary schools have been back in person since the beginning of the year, things are very different at the secondary level. In elementary classes, the students and teachers mainly only interact with the students in their one class. At the secondary level, students and teachers are exposed to students in 7 different classes, making our exposure much greater. According to the Michigan Safe Schools Roadmap, classroom desks must be sanitized between classes. However, according to our letter of agreement that you all agreed to recently, all cleaning is to be done by custodians. How can the necessary cleaning possibly be done with only 2 custodians in our building of over 1,400 students? We all want things to go back to more normal, but until this pandemic is more under control, it is just not safe to return in-person teaching at the secondary level. Please do not be a rubber stamp for the administrative team. Please do your research and question the plans that are being proposed. Please come talk to the teachers and building administrators about their experiences. We're counting on you. Our next one comes from Dennis Kosian, 5139 Maple Ridge. Dear Board of Education, Sarah and I are PPS educators and parents of 2 elementary students. We're asking the PPS administration and Board of Education delay the return to learn plan until January at the earliest. We are still in the middle of a pandemic with over 1,000 Americans dying each day. With that in mind, we should continue with a virtual learning model with in-school support. First, we've been teaching and learning virtually for only about 4 weeks. PPS teachers work so hard and put in so many hours to learn how to be great virtual educators. Many veteran teachers have felt like rookies at the beginning of the year. However, the delivery instruction has been strong throughout the secondary buildings. We will only get better as we move through the fall. We should give this model a chance before ditching it with limited data. Without a doubt, there have been glitches throughout this process. Internet outages, students who get kicked off a class meet, and audio problems add to the stress we are all feeling. The students have been incredibly resilient and have worked hard to get through any hiccups. The hybrid plan proposed by the PPS administration does not allow for equitable learning. Teaching a group of students face-to-face while others are learning from home makes little sense. How can our secondary educators best serve live and virtual groups at the same time? How will the science teacher run a lab in class while a group of kids are watching from home? How will educators include the virtual students without ignoring them and leaving them behind? In addition to dividing kids alphabetically by class is a haphazard way to ensure that classes are balanced. What if 20 students return to first hour ELA class? Depending on the current class roster, 15 of those students may be in the A group with only 5 in the B group. The B group kids will get much more attention from the classroom teacher, while A kids and the classroom teacher will be placed in an unsafe situation. Our district is not equipped to clean each room between classes, or even every 4 hours as mandated by the state of Michigan. At West Middle School, our head custodian is often without assistant during the day. She's amazing at her job, but she cannot keep our building safe without extra support staff. Who will clean surfaces in the classrooms after each period? Our secondary students are constantly changing rooms throughout the day. How will student bathrooms be cleaned and sanitized? Will the district install HEPA air filter systems, especially in rooms without windows? Our next one comes from Amber Dixon, teacher at Portage Northern High School, 1437 Redstock. Dear Board of Education, I sent a longer version of this to every board member earlier today, but this is a synopsis. I have some sincere concerns about this dramatic change to return our students to face-to-face for the second quarter, in addition to current stresses about virtual education. 1, my son is a senior at the school I teach in and is loving virtual learning. He said the teachers are doing great. He enjoys less stress of being at home and not worrying about having to leave and be at school on time and wearing what he wants. When I asked him about going back to school, he said, no, I don't want to die or get sick. Number 2, the initial return to learn plan said we would not return face-to-face until we were in phase 5. What data has shown that to change? Putting up to half of our high school students back in our high school will put our teachers, the 3rd highest age group, most 40 to 49, and our students, 10 to 19, the 4th highest age group for cases of COVID in Kalamazoo County, in greater health risk. Number 3, I have 154 students. In virtual learning right now, I've spent an unbelievably stressful amount of time planning, rewriting, creating material to work online despite already having a Google Classroom. Not to mention grading all online work and learning new technology for teaching and testing. All more than any other year in my 20 years of teaching to ensure my students have the best possible curriculum presented to them. To now change to multiple classes within a class, that stress is beyond what I can comprehend. Second quarter is not the end or start of something at the secondary level. It's a continuation, and a large change could disrupt the learning environment we have established. 4, The only way I can see hybrid working for safety, lesson planning, and working with all the students is to teach virtually to all students in my classroom. This would not be a normal return to face-to-face learning. Any teacher or student has taught hybrid is saying this. Just look at the experiences discussed online. To sum up, my own son will not be returning face-to-face as he is a senior in the building I teach in. I suppose this is a good time to switch. Why weren't the Return to Learn Committee or other stakeholders involved in the decision making for this plan? And what safety measures are in place now to make us safe? Because there's not time to establish them, 34 days until the second quarter. Michelle Mason is our next commenter. Dear Board of Education members, I write you as a concerned staff member. I've worked for Portage Public Schools for 16 years and have not ever felt the absolute need to raise my concern to you until now. The decision to bring the secondary buildings to a hybrid system beginning with the second marking period is troubling to me for many reasons. The first of these is the safety of students and staff. I've not seen a plan to clean classrooms between class periods, anything to minimize staff exposure to the hundreds of students, nor to cohort students in any way for contact tracking. There are only 2 custodians on staff during the day at my building, and I have not seen or heard a plan to change that. As a dedicated teacher, I have very high anxiety about the expectation to concurrently teach students in building on a virtual home day and learning entirely virtually. I do not know any districts that have had success with similar plans, nor am I aware of any data that shows how this will enhance student learning. Adding student supervision in person on top of teaching virtually is too much to manage, and in my opinion will lower the quality of education for all students. I want my students back in my classroom very much. I want to be in lab, laugh together in the hallway, and see their extracurricular events. A hybrid system, though, is not this. As a professional, I do not see how I can work with 3 simultaneous groups of students learning over 2 different platforms in an equitable fashion. Without any plan in place and approximately 1 month until the proposed implementation, I would ask that the decision be reconsidered. Thank you. And Michelle lives at 9418 Chapel Street in Portage. I believe we have 2 more. Kate Phipps is our next commenter, 6307 Peachtree Street in Portage. Dear trustees, Superintendent Beeling, and administrative team. Today I'm writing to you concerning the proposed changes at the secondary schedule. I've been teaching in Portage for over 30 years. In that time, I've seen many changes, however, nothing compares to where we are now. Many aspects of our experiences in education are out of our control. As a team leader, I received an email about potential changes on September 22nd. This was the first I had heard about the plan to move to some level of face-to-face teaching that is slated for November 2nd, 2020. This seemed to come out of the blue. When the Return to Learn plan was established, it was made clear we would be teaching grades 6 through 12 online with in-building support while we are in phase 4. I have to ask, what has changed? Excuse me. If we begin teaching face-to-face in the secondary level, how is that going to work? I will have students face-to-face, online, and virtual all at the same time. When will our classrooms be sanitized? Even with an extended passing time of 15 minutes, how will our rooms be safe for the next group of students? How are we going to keep our students and staff safe? What is the pedagogical justification to change this right now? Changing things up right now does not follow any best practices in education. As of today, we are at 15 with our classes in Google Meets. My students and I are discovering different ways that we can work through our study of the epic Beowulf in English 12. Every day, my students surprise me with their insights and hard work. We are in this together. I love teaching. Do I want things to be as they were? Of course. But I have to state that returning to face-to-face instruction is irresponsible at this time. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration in keeping grades 6 through 12 online until we are in phase 5. Keeping our students and staff safe is the only way we can make this work. And our final comment is from Sean Brennan. My name is Sean Brennan. I live in Kalamazoo at Emerald Park Apartments, 2280 East Cork Street, and I am a teacher in Portage Schools. I'm writing to express my deep concern, at the very least, about the ambiguity and apparent haste behind the proposed Return to Learn hybrid instruction, but at least as much about the logistics of the actual plan. Following last week's building administration meeting, the proposal of a Return to Learn face-to-face instruction in separate cohorts was jarring news to many Portage Public Schools secondary teachers. Correspondence was given, intended as a courtesy by building administrators to teachers summarizing a return to learn plan that would feature 2 cohorts, alternatively using learning spaces. What was not given includes any tangible information regarding a bell schedule, dismissal and transition procedures, or student and staff traffic flow. Any updates in COVID-19 case data that would make this change safe, particularly in Kalamazoo County, where the disease remains on a steady rise. Any updates in CDC guidance or other known COVID-19 safety practices that would make this change any more advisable than the conditions under which we developed an all virtual curriculum in August. Any assurances that resources and personnel would be dispatched to increase compliance with COVID-19 safety measures, and any language whatsoever indicating that this decision was reached from a student-centered paradigm. As a music educator, I spent the summer attending webinars, forming committees, occasionally chairing committees, reviewing documentation and guidance from numerous professional and academic organizations in my field, so that I had a concrete plan for in-person instruction, online instruction, or hybrid instruction. Any plan, though, needs time and resources to lay groundwork and procedures, and will not fulfill its potential on a running start. This was the reason behind many of the shortcomings of the educational system across the nation during the spring closure, which generated unfavorable overall opinion of virtual education among the public. This was the source of frustration for many educators in August who had spent countless unpaid hours drafting plans, waiting on a few key specifics from the districts, only to make 2 rapid shifts in curricular structure within as many weeks at the start of the contract year. Only now, 5 weeks into the school year, could even the best teachers be expected to be operating any educational system with any meaningful evaluation of students. And yet, secondary teachers across the district are being asked to uproot their current modes of instruction, again in haste, on a running start. Teachers will be developing these new modes of instruction while still delivering and assessing the current one. That is our final comment for tonight.
Michelle, thank you very much. And on behalf of the board, thank you to everyone for taking the time to reach out to us this evening. And we'll move to comments by board trustees, please.
Hey, Randy, this is Bo.
Sure.
I'll go first, but I just have I've been jotting notes, so I just have a series of reflections. A lot of anxiety in those comments. So I think that's probably the most important thing to note. That's the most important takeaway there. The other thing I wrote down here is that, the old expression that a rumor gets halfway around the world while the truth is still getting its pants on. And just, what has happened with the whole kind of in the last week, or maybe less than that, is kind of as this is played out. And I don't understand it, but there's a tremendous amount of anxiety. The silver lining is that I think the admin team has heard a lot of the concerns. So, the presenters have had a lot of good points, a lot of good kind of challenging points to think about. Another point here is that, and I've said this before, but PPS is an institution, and institutions do not like uncertainty, and they do not like change. And I think listening to these comments tonight, that's kind of underscored. Kind of a unique thing. I mean, there was an undertone, like 2.5 months ago, we were hearing critical comments about the plan that we've started with. And I heard an undertone tonight of kind of like there's some acceptance and, folks are kind of getting into the groove in that plan. And I even heard one comment was, hey, man, let's give this model a chance. So it's just, a lot of this is just kind of understanding, human anxiety and kind of human behavior and just helping members of our team through a difficult time. I just want to wrap up by saying that, just reflecting on this last month, I'm in awe that we've got this thing off the ground this year and have made a decent start. And I think everybody involved, the whole team, everybody is a hero, and it's incredibly appreciated. So thank you.
Great comments, Bo. Thank you.
Randy, it's Rusty.
Excuse me. I'll go next. First of all, just to reiterate, I hope administration continues to communicate. I'd like to thank them for the transparency they've showed. I think that's what I'm seeing. We are asking for input. Obviously, no vote was going to happen tonight. I doubt anything will happen at our next meeting. But keeping that in mind, it probably have to happen 2 meetings from now. And so we'll need a lot of communication to our community, to our staff and our students. But I appreciate that. I appreciate the transparency, and no good deed goes unpunished. And so I think the administration is doing the right thing. I just want to make a few comments on some of the stuff going on in the district and the community. Obviously, everybody knows there's an election coming up for school board. And we have some very good candidates out there, specifically our current board members. I am concerned, well, not concerned, but disappointed that the teachers or the PEA leadership team, first I'm disappointed in the survey they put out. They sent questions to all the candidates, didn't say what they were going to do, and to me that lacked transparency. Teachers don't know what we said. When we got questions from MLive, we got questions from the League of Women's Voters. It's a transparent process. I'm sure MLive is going to publish everybody's comments. The League of Women Voters has everybody's comments. I find the PEA process less than transparent. I don't know what the other candidates answered. So I was kind of disappointed in their process. Specifically, they asked the candidates to kind of agree to have meetings with them one-on-one, not candidates, but if you were a trustee. And I want to remind everybody, our vision is we're committed to all. And this board chose all very carefully because we're committed to students, we're committed to our staff, we're committed to our community. And to take those stakeholders and give one stakeholder that has actual organized leadership the chance to sit down one-on-one would not follow our vision. So I just want to express my disappointment. Furthermore, I want to express my disappointment that the video that PEA leadership put out on YouTube, making the endorsements without nobody ever specifically understanding what our answers were. Hopefully someday those answers will be known, and the community can know why specific organizations are supporting who. Lastly, I want to once again thank the teachers. Specifically, I'm the only board member who has students in the class, and I see how hard these people are working, specifically to engage kids. Kids are learning. Education is moving forward. I want to make sure our kids in Portage are moving along as fast as kids in other communities. I have a senior in high school, and I want to make sure when he goes into college, he's at the same level that other kids are, and everybody's struggling to get there. So we have to do everything we can, but I really do appreciate everybody's efforts in the engagement piece and in the learning. So once again, thanks to the admin team for the transparency, and everybody in this community, and to the staff.
Thank you, Rusty. Anyone else?
Sure. I would like to thank the admin team too for their presentation tonight. And I want to thank the teachers for all their comments too. The disappointment to me is that there has been so much time wasted on anxiety for something that isn't even written down anywhere. And I'm not sure where people got their ideas about what was happening and who was leading the charge, but I do think it's important that we continue to be transparent so everyone knows what's happening, when, or if things are just being opened up and discussed, which they are happening in terms of the surveys and the committees that people are working with admin on that. So let's just all take a deep breath and know that your admin team and your board is going to make decisions that are best for our schools and our community and our students. And the teachers are all a part of that. So thank you for clearing everything up tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Terry.
Brandy?
Anyone else?
Brandy.
Hi, Celeste.
Okay, I just wanted to indicate that I have officially removed myself from retirement in a certain sense. My granddaughter is a 5th grade virtual student, and I'm getting a whole new perspective of what that involves. I will say that the teacher's working extremely hard to wrap her arms around the kids in a virtual setting. So I do appreciate that experience.
Thank you for your comments, Celeste. Anyone else this evening?
Hey, Randy, this is Kurt. Hey, I'm sort of frustrated with the teachers and the administration for this rumor that went around, wasting an hour and a half of our time, and the administration not being able to quell this rumor before it got this far. So sort of frustrated with both groups. So that's all I've got to say.
Okay, Kurt. Anyone else this evening? Okay, our next agenda item is to move into closed session, and we need to take a roll call vote to do that. The motion is on page 30, please.
Randy, I can do that. I would move that the Board of Education move into closed session for the purpose of considering an attorney-client privileged written opinion as allowed under the Open Meetings Act 15.268, Section 8H.
Thanks, Bo. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Kurt. Barb, could you take the roll call vote, please?
Mr. Rathburn?
Rusty, you're
Mr.
muted.
Rathburn?
Yes.
Dr. Shelton Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Van Antwerp?
Yes.
Mrs. Novaria?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Droppers?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Thank you, Barb. The motion passes. We are going into closed session, and we'll come out of closed session to in the open session to take action. Is there a motion, please?
Yeah, President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education approve the ULP authorization resolution as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Kurt. Any discussion? Okay, very good. I'll take the roll call vote. Terry,
Yes.
Celeste,
Yes.
Rusty,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
Joanne,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
and Randy. Yes, it's unanimous. The motion passes. And I believe we've reached the end of our agenda. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks, everyone.